and welcome to Conversations with Women Living Well After 50. It's so lovely to have you join me today for another conversation about embracing life and living life to the full. We all have a story to tell, and whether that's just telling our family and friends or just for ourselves. But for many women over 50, there's a burning desire inside to actually create a book, to write a book, to publish a book. I've had a couple of friends who've realised that dream after 50. They've published books and they've always wanted to be an author, but they've finally achieved that dream. And just recently, another friend of mine last week has started a creative writing course. So it's a lovely time of life for us to be able to make our dreams a reality. And I'm delighted today to introduce my guest, Joanne Tracey, author, baker, sunrise chaser. Isn't that lovely? And she's going to talk to us about how she achieved her dream of being an author, and also to give us some tips for those budding authors out there who are a little bit hesitant for taking the step and actually making it happen. Jo has a book out very soon, and I've read all of her books. I just love them, and I know that you will too. So a little bit about Jo. Joanne lives up in the Sunshine Coast of Queensland, a beautiful area by the beach. She lives with her husband and daughter and their Cocker Spaniel. She's an unapologetic daydreamer and an eternal optimist and a confirmed morning person. And you will notice that if you follow her on Instagram, every morning we're treated to a beautiful sunrise photo. And she never misses a day, and it's just the highlight of my morning actually. Jo writes contemporary romance, romantic comedy, women's fiction, and what she likes to call foodie lit, which is the perfect excuse for her to indulge in her other love, which is baking, in the name of research. Her characters in the book cook what she wants them to or what she'd like to try. And through her characters, she can even try out occupations that she'd perhaps like to have or new business ideas, even though her husband sometimes tells her that perhaps you might need a little bit more thought about that, darling. But daydreaming for her is big, and that is a wonderful part of life. Daydreaming and enjoying our life and just going for what we want to do, making our dreams a reality. Even though Jo lives in paradise on the Sunshine Coast, she gets her inspiration for her books from her travels. So we might be in the Cotswolds, we might be in Melbourne, we might be Queenstown, Bali, Hong Kong. You never know where you're going to end up in one of Jo's books, but you do know that you will be somewhere that takes you away from everyday life. When Jo isn't writing or day jobbing, she loves baking, reading, and long walks along the ocean, taking those beautiful sunrise photos. She's also got her life goals as well, and apart from being a world-famous author, which is the top of her list, she wants to be an extra on Midsummer Murders. So if you know that British program, perhaps being a dog walker or in Badger's Drift. And she'd also like to appear on Desert Island Discs. She'd love to also cook her way through all of Nigella's books, and I hope I get invited to dinner for those. So let's pop over, meet Jo and join the conversation and find out how we could perhaps become a published author ourselves. Well, welcome, Jo. It's so lovely to have you join me today in conversation. Author, baker, sunrise chaser. I love that.
Thanks, Sue. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about this because I'm a bit starstruck because I've read all your books and I love them all. And in fact, on the weekend, I knew this was coming up this week. So I thought, I'm just going to reread a couple. So I had a lovely weekend of catching up on rereading your books. And what I mentioned in the introduction was that we've all got a story within us, but there are some women that really want to take that to the next level, and they feel they've got a book in them that they want to publish. And for some, that doesn't happen until, well, after they've retired. But I just wondered, when did you know that you wanted to be an author?
It's an interesting question. And I know everybody is supposed to say, oh, I've known forever. And to an extent, I think I probably did, only because I've always been an avid reader. So I'm that person who I start to do something and I think, oh, I could probably do this all the time. So I start to read and I think, oh, I could write these. Hello, we're talking about Little Blacker Pony, or we're talking about the Enid Blyton books. And then as I got older, I wanted to write Nancy Drew books. And then as I got older, I wanted to write Mills and Boons, and then an airport thriller. And then I put it all aside and did the whole corporate job thing. And it really didn't come back up again until I turned about 40. It was a bit of a turning point. And at that point, I started to write again. And I thought, yeah, I think I really want to do this. This makes me happy. It's a great creative outlet. And that's how it started. And I have stories that I want to tell. So, yeah, I guess all my life is the easy answer, but the more appropriate one is probably seriously, since I hit that midlife point.
I suppose you've had life experience as well then. So there's more storylines that you can write about with experience. So your first book, Baby It's You, I think it was published about 2015 or round about then. Yeah. So how long did that actually take you to write, and what was that feeling like to have your first book published?
Oh, that one took... I was playing with one version of or another of that book, I would say, for I reckon about 5 years.
Wow.
So yeah, the first book I ever wrote was just dreadful and will never ever see the light of day. And that was, I think I did that, well, I started that the year I turned 40. But parts of that fell into Baby It's You. Parts of that fell into Big Girls Don't Cry. And I'm using parts of that in the one that I'm writing at the moment. So I guess it had its purpose. But once I got all of that one down on paper, so to speak, or on the laptop, it just released all these other characters behind it. So it was like that was there as a stopping point for anything else coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And once I wrote it, got it all out of my system, I could then say, okay, well, I quite like this bit. I like this bit. I like this bit. So Baby It's You came out of all of that. And as for how it felt when it was published, it's the most frightening thing I think I've ever done in my entire life.
I wasn't expecting that as the answer, actually.
It's funny because it's a creative thing like that is always going to have a part of you in it. And there is a little part of me in every single one of my characters. Sometimes it's a job that I want to do, or a place that I want to live, or a way I want to look, or it could be something that has happened, an experience, a place I've been to. But there's a tiny little bit of me in every single one of my characters. So when you put that out there, it's frightening. It's like, it's making, I'm not very good with vulnerability, and that is the ultimate in vulnerability. But at the same time, totally proud, and I celebrate it.
Yeah, well, so you should. I mean, it's easy to say I'm going to write a book, but as you said, your first one it took 5 years really to get to go to fruition, and it is scary to try something new and to put yourself out there for other people to comment about and write reviews, and also I think too you may feel like a lot of us do that what's the family going to think, or what are my friends going to think?
And that's definitely there. And my chick lit series, so the rom-com series like Baby It's You, Big Girls Don't Cry, they're all written in first person. And there's a couple of little spicy scenes in there that, let me just say, I was a little bit concerned about my mother reading, but she did say she was going to pass it around to her friends, but who knows. But no, I did worry about that, and I worried about what work colleagues would think. In fact, I worried more about what friends, family, work colleagues would think than I worried about what anybody else would think.
Yeah.
So, because they know me and they know my voice, they know my sense of humour, they know me, they know my life. Well, and I think the ones that I was more concerned about were people who didn't know me that well. So,
but
you know, the one.
That's right. Well,
yeah.
I know you, but what gets me is, sometimes I'll be reading something and I'll think, oh, was that, it sounds just like you. And I'm thinking, did Joe really do that? Or whatever. So, but I think you do have to draw on personal experience, don't you? If you want to make it convincing.
Yeah. The funny thing is, though, when you do write as first person, so Baby It's You, let's take Baby It's You as an example. Part of that is set in Bali because I adore Bali, and that's why Big Girls Don't Cry is set up there as well. So I took a lot of that as inspiration, and there is one scene in Baby It's You that I took actually as inspiration from a friend of mine who was trying to teach me how to run. And bear in mind, there is nothing else in that friend but this little running story, and that came out. That's in there, but in very, very different circumstances. So, yeah, as for the rest of it, it just happens. I'm what they call a Panzer. So quite often I start with an idea. It might just be a character, but it's an idea. And then it just happens. So the rest of it all falls into place. I literally live with those characters in my head for the period of time that I'm writing that book, and then they're gone, and there's another couple of characters in there. So for the whole time that I'm writing that book, I have them in my head. So in most cases, I haven't done half the things of what my characters do. In fact, most of the things that my characters do. But I think because I'm thinking with them, I'm writing every day, I'm jotting stuff down every day. Songs will bring up meaning for particular books or particular scenes, and it just falls into place behind there.
And I noticed from reading your books that you love to incorporate your favourite recipes into the storyline. So what comes first? Do you think about the story or the recipe, or how do you combine the two? The chicken or the egg?
Usually the food comes second. So is that true? Happy Ever After, the food definitely came second. Wish You Were Here, that opens with a little bit of a blog post over winter. And believe it or not, a cauliflower recipe actually inspired a lot of that book. It just was, that book came about, and all of that story came about because we were staying in a cottage in the Cotswolds that I actually based Curlew Cottage on. That's in Wish You Were Here, and is also in the one I'm writing at the moment. And that book was going to be completely different to what it is. In fact, I'd written, I'd say about 50,000 words of it at that point. And in that particular cottage, there was a heap of cookbooks on the bookcase. And that's what I love about Airbnbs, when they have cookbooks in the bookcases and other books in the bookcases that I can read. And there was I think it was a River Cottage veg book.
Oh, yes.
And it had everything that was in season, and I was sort of mucking around reading stuff, and I remember saying to my daughter, I could do this. I could live in a little place like this, and I could just live off the land and have like a little garden out the back, and the dog going through the fields and stuff. And she said, Mum, that would last about as long as until the wine ran out and you had to actually go back up that lane to a shop and buy some more. But from that, I thought, I mightn't be able to do that, but my character could do that.
And I
So,
suppose that's it. You can live through your characters, can't you?
yeah. So the one I'm writing at the moment, Escape to Curlew Cottage, that started life as a Christmas cookbook,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's very definitely not that anymore. It's about scones and tea, but it's another story.
Yes. Well, that's, takes me on to something where I think, you make it sound not, I won't say easy, but, writing books and, you've written several now. But what happens, have you experienced writer's block? And what do you do to overcome that blank page? Because I think that's, well, I'm not sure I've got a book in me, but, I sort of think, oh, I might have a go at writing, and then I sit down and then nothing comes. And I think, how does a writer and author cope with when that happens?
The easy answer to that is you write. But when the words don't come, which is the question that you're asking, have I had it happen? Yes. Yes, and it hasn't been so much a blank page type of thing. It's been more figuring out a problem in plot, in the actual plot. So I've got my characters into a particular situation, and somehow I need to get them through that situation, and I have no idea how to do it. And I guess that's where, when you're writing by the seat of your pants, you do come unstuck, because you can go all the way down a particular rabbit hole, and then you've got to somehow get them back to the other end. And you've got to get them to that other end in a way that the people who are reading that book still have sympathy for them and care about them getting to that other end. How do I get through that? Generally, I have to go back and ask myself almost a set of interview questions in a backstory for the character. So it might be, what does she really want? Like, what is the motivation for my character at this point? What is the worst possible thing that could happen to her? What would she care the most about? And once I can get the answer to that, I can generally get the writing through to the next stage. I think it's where a lot of people will say that you finish the day's writing one sentence or one paragraph before you run out of words.
Right.
And there's certainly something to that as well, because if you do that, you've got a place to start the next day when you're writing, and it can sometimes come from that. What tends to work for me if I get to a really tough spot is I walk. So, and and I walk without earphones in. So a lot of the time I walk and I listen to other things, but when I'm really working through something that's just not working, I walk without earphones. So you're listening, you're seeing, you're thinking, and there's no other voice in my head. There's nothing else that's distracting me from what it is that's happening. And quite often I'll get home and I'll go, yep, that's what I need to do.
Yeah, so I find... Oh, go on.
Yeah, sorry, sir. I was going to say another thing that works too is blogging.
Yeah.
So completely different subject, you come back to it and it's there.
Yeah, I'm the same. I will go for a long run and the ideas start to flow. And then I have to think to myself, gee, I hope I remember that when I get home. That was a good idea. But it's really good because you're getting outside, you just with yourself and your thoughts, and you let your mind wander, and it's really a good place to be, either walking or running, to just get those thoughts flowing again. So I know where you're coming from with that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the healthy side of writing, because I suppose that sitting for long periods of time might become a bit of a habit. You're in the zone, you're thinking, oh, I just know what I'm writing here, and you want to type away, but of course we all know that sitting for long periods isn't that healthy. So how do you ensure that you stay healthy, and what do you do to sort of break up that without actually interrupting your thought pattern, I suppose?
Yeah, I do actually. I fall into that habit a lot of just sitting on my butt, and writers aren't the most healthy people going around, because it comes naturally. We sit on our bum. That's what you do. sit down, hands on keyboard. So I do obviously watch the way that I do work in terms of my ergonomics. So that's just a given. But I have a little alarm go off on my Fitbit every hour that no matter what I'm doing, no matter what zone I'm in, it gets me up and I walk around the house for a couple of minutes just to move. Because I think if I didn't have that little buzzer going off at 10 to the hour every hour, I would just sit here. So I walk first thing in the morning, and that's a given too. That's the start of the day. That I see the sun come up. That's the sunrise chaser part of it. So I walk every morning, and then I have a big routine for the day. So I start work at the same time every day. I break at the same time for lunch every day. I take the dog for a short walk at that same time every day. I knock off at the same time every day, and I do another short walk at that point in time just to clear my head. But it's all about that tiny little incidental movement, because otherwise I wouldn't get any.
Yes, and I was telling everyone about your beautiful Instagram photos. They start my day off, and I know a lot of people look forward to them every morning, and I don't think you've ever missed one. And it's been going for a couple of years at least, if not longer, and I admire you for that. Rain, hail or shine, you're out there taking a photo. But that's a good way for you to start the day too, isn't it? Because you get yourself up and motivated and going, and you know, wake yourself up, and then you come back probably ready to settle into the workflow.
Well, you do. And the other thing is too, like I work a day job during the week. So no matter what sort of rubbish the day throws at you, no matter how unproductive you are for the rest of the day, you've got one tick in the box already. So that to me is like, okay, my day started with a sunrise, and it started with me actually ticking something off. So even if I do nothing else today, I've achieved two things already. So hashtag winning.
Yeah, that's right. And healthy too, because seeing the sunrise, great for your mental health. And walking, great for your physical health. So, I mean, it's a perfect way to start the day, and it's good. I'm big on having morning rituals, and I think that the way you start your day really sets you up for the type of day you're going to have. So yes, keep those sunrise photos coming, that's for sure. But look, I'm sure we've got budding authors out there listening to you, and what would you say would be your 3 top tips for someone who wants to get started? They keep procrastinating, not sure where to start. What would you suggest to those people?
Well, right is right. So that's the first thing. Right. And it doesn't matter whether it's in a journal. It doesn't matter whether it's bullet points in a journal. It doesn't matter whether it's a little blog. It doesn't matter whether you actually start to write a story, but you have to write. And I think the biggest, and also the other thing is, it doesn't matter what sort of quality that writing is, because your first draft is rarely a good one. Sometimes the words flow, but it's really unusual that they do, especially in a first draft. And there's a saying that says you can't edit a blank piece of paper, and you can't. But you can get a first draft and turn it into a really great story. And I think the other thing too is most books, so an average size book is around between 80 and 100,000 words, which sounds a lot. But if you break that down into something really quite achievable, so if you broke that down to say 500 words a day, that's not much at all. That literally is, in most cases, half an hour to an hour's worth of work. So it's one of those things that you can fit in at any time, which brings me to my third point, which is you don't wait for the perfect time, because it's never, ever, ever going to come. So that first book I wrote, Baby, It's You, that was written while I was doing a lot of travel for work. So I was in and out of Hong Kong. I was doing some relocations for work. I was working long hours. I was commuting long hours. My daughter was in high school. So we're talking 5 years ago now. I used to find any 10 minutes, any 15 minutes, anything I could get. So I'd be writing notes if I was on the train or on the bus. I used to write if I was at airports. I used to take my laptop in when she was having maths tuitions and sit outside the room, because that was when she was doing her HSC, sit outside the room and tap away for an hour there. When she was doing swim squad, I used to sit by the side of the pool and do it, or get up early in the morning and go down while she was in the pool. I'd sit in the car and write. So if you want to do it, there's a way to do it.
Because I was just
Yeah.
going to say, because you're at the moment combining another job with being an author as well, so it's difficult to fit them both in. I would think you'd have to be organised to some extent.
It is. It's organised, but it's also, it's what I want to do. So because it's what I want to do, it's really a no-brainer. I find the time to do it. And even if it's only, and I do a little bit on whatever I'm working on every single day. And generally that might just be for the hour between me knocking off from my day job until when we start cooking dinner. Or it might be while my husband's cooking dinner, because we take it in turns. I might be tapping away at the keyboard while he's doing that and talking to him at the same time. It might be sitting up in bed for an hour at night before I turn the light off and just jotting some words out. But it's what I want to do, so I do it. And you find the time. But if I was to wait for that perfect slot of time, I wouldn't do it. I know what I'm like with deadlines. I'm absolutely I'm the person who zips my suitcase up 5 minutes before we are due to leave for the airport. So I know what I am like with deadlines. It would not happen.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about, is that when you need an editor or someone to keep you in line and say, when are you getting that book finished, Jo?
Yep, every year. So I'm an indie publisher, and I work with a fabulous editor. She's really, she helps me do better and try, to the extent that every single book that I put out, I can go hand on heart at the end of the day and say that is the best I could have done at that point in time. She helps me get there. But I will put in some dates with Nicola at the start of every single year. So I'll say to her, you'll get X by X, you'll get X by X, you'll get X by X. I know she's busy. She does a lot of work for other traditional publishers. She's got other authors that are lined up as well. If I miss my slot, I don't get in until the next slot. So it's not just me that's missing it. I'm doing her out of income as well.
Yeah.
And she then has a slot that she needs to find some way of filling, or she doesn't earn that money, which she needs, obviously, for her normal living expenses. So that's what I do at the start of every year, and I keep to those deadlines. So I know she's going to get something. Sometimes it mightn't be what it is that I've told her she was going to get.
But she's getting something.
She's getting something. So,
and at the end of the day, it will all come together. But you mentioned that you're an indie author. Can you just explain what that is for those that might not know?
Yeah, independently published. So some people call it self-published. I call it independently published, but there's certainly nothing independent about it. It is a team. So I run it as if I was my own publisher business. So I pay for an author. I pay for an editor. I pay for copy edit. I organise covers myself. I organise the way in which it goes out, whether it goes to bookshops or whether it's online for print or ebooks, but all of that is on me. So the success or otherwise of it is on me. And while I'd like to one day see my books in bookshops and on the shelf, I actually like the control a little more. And I think that's one of the reasons I ended up going down that way. So Baby It's You, back to Baby It's You, I'd gone through what they call a slush pile. So certain traditional publishers will have certain times of the month where you can put in what they call an unsolicited or unagented manuscript, and they will consider it for publishing. So I put Baby It's You into 3 of those. And all three came back and requested another chapter. So you put it in with a chapter and a synopsis. All three came back, requested another chapter. Two of them came back and said, can we have the whole thing? Great. You get terribly excited about it all. And then months go past. One of them came back and said to me, please don't show anybody else. We're very interested. Great. Very excited. 6 months after that, that publisher came back and said, you know, it doesn't have enough romance in it for us. Okay, fine. It's got great legs, not enough romance in it. So I farmed it off to the other one that had said they wanted to see it all. They came back, please don't show anybody else. And then they've come back, another 6 months has passed, and they've said, sorry, it's got a little bit too much romance in it for us. So by this point, I'm now 18 months down the track with nothing happening. And that's normal. There is nothing abnormal about that. But I looked at that and thought, okay, well, this book obviously has legs because it's got almost to that final point. It has legs. So if I believe in it enough, which I did, it's up to me now to get it out there. So I sat down and worked out a list of the editors that I wanted to work with. So other authors whose work I liked, they usually have an acknowledgement in the back of the book to their editor because they're absolutely priceless, a good editor. So I made a list of editors that I want to work with, and I contacted each of them, emailed each of them and said, do you work with indie authors? Do you work with self-published authors? And a few of them came back and said, yeah, not really. They're not reliable enough. But a few came back and said, yes, absolutely. But it's up to you to meet your deadlines, and we want to see a sample of your work first. So that's the way that I took it. And it's harder because I have to do my own marketing, and I'm not very good at that. But at the end of the day, it's all on me. I get to write what it is that I want to write. And it doesn't really matter if my editor gets something that's completely different to what I've promised her that she's going to get, because I haven't had to ask permission to write what it is that I want to write.
That's right.
So,
yeah, and I was going to say, I was thinking more about, you know, when you're going the traditional route, a lot of people get so disheartened because they get rejection after rejection after rejection. But as you were telling me your story, I was thinking, oh, it'd be almost better to be rejected rather than be sort of waiting and waiting with the hope that, oh yeah, we love it, but at the end of 18 months or whatever it was, you know, that can be just as disheartening as well. And I suppose then you sort of sign yourself over to the control of others, and whereas being an indie author, yes, it's more work for you, but you are in control, and you're more likely to publish something and get it finished and out there than trying to go down the traditional route. So for me, I think that's a good way to do it, really, because you're in control, and you will see something eventually published, and that's the whole, you know, that's what you want, isn't it? To have other people appreciate your work and enjoy your work that you do.
Yeah. It is, but having said that too, indie publishing's not for everybody.
No.
And nor is traditional publishing for everybody. So, you know, it really is a horses for courses type of thing. But I guess a really good example was when I wrote Happy Ever After. That book almost wrote itself. I was meant to be writing something else. I was meant to be writing the one that I'm about to press publish on. That's due out at the end of September. But instead, Happy Ever After came into my head, or the characters for Happy Ever After came into my head. And I think I wrote that book the first draft of that book was done in 6 weeks.
Wow.
So it just wrote itself. It really flowed. And by the time I'd done my first draft and sent it off to my editor for a read through, the way we work is slightly different. I'll do a first draft, send it through to her so that she knows that because otherwise I would just tinker and waste time. And she'll come back and say, yay, whatever, you need to do this, or this really, the pacing's off, you need to, but it'll just be a really quick read through. I sent it through to her for that, and she's come back and she said, it's in really good shape. There's not a lot we need to really do with this. It's in great shape. So it wrote itself. Now, if I'd been contracted to a traditional publisher for the book I was meant to be writing, I would have had a very, very different conversation, I suspect.
Yes, yes.
Because Happy Ever After is a different book. I have middle-aged protagonists. I have almost what happens after the Happy Ever After. So it's a very different book to the one that I was supposed to be writing.
Well, that's the one I read on the weekend, and it's one of my favourites. So before we finish up today, I want to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what does being a woman living well mean to you?
I like this question, and I came up with about 3 or 4 different answers when I was thinking about what I could possibly say to this. But my answer truly is, if I'm living well, I'm taking advantage of the possibilities. And
love it.
That's what it is for me. It's being healthy enough, being able enough, being ready enough to say yes to the possibilities. That's what excites me. And to me, that's a life lived well.
It is. It is. That's beautiful. And I love this question because each each guest gives me a different answer, and it's just beautiful to hear the way they perceive the question to be and how they want to live their life. So it's been an absolute delight having you today. We could keep chatting for hours, I think.
Oh, we could, Sue. We sure could. It's been lovely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. And I hope that you will join us again, and perhaps after your book's published, so we can talk a bit more about that. For those of you that have been listening, you can pre-order Jo's next 2 books from Jo, which I'm excited about because I've been waiting a while for her next one to come out, but that's another story. But, you can pre-order that from her website. So I'll be putting all those links into the notes section of the program today. And remember to, if you are a budding author, just start writing. That's the key message from Jo today, I think. It's just you can't edit a blank page, as she said, and I think that's a key point. And don't worry about what it reads like. Just get it out, and that starts the flow. And so I think there'll be many that reach for their journal or their blog or their laptop and just start writing after the conversation today. And remember, if you've enjoyed the conversation and you think that someone out there might be interested, don't forget to share with them, leave me a review and subscribe to the channel so that you never miss a conversation. I look forward to introducing you to my next guest next week. And until then, remember to embrace life and enjoy life every day. Thanks for joining us.